Music creation, spreading of ideas, music invention. This one's about spectral processing. So you can use spectral processing in very subtle ways to create a more organic quality to your drums and your patterns and all these kinds of things so that they sound like they're more live or alive, and so that they have more interesting aspects to them, but not in a drastic way where you've totally morphed the sound, but in a subtle way where they've grabbed little impressions of the spectrum to make more unique modulation occurring as time goes on through this piece, through this pattern, so that you can have something that's kind of beyond what was already there, but not too drastic. So the spectral processing gets into the aspects of sound design that it's not easily accessible, for the average person to be able to go into surgically, cut and paste and process, and this takes a long time. So what they do is you use a spectral processing system that takes an impression of amplitude, frequency, duration, and it makes an impression that you can use to kind of travel along with the pattern, so that the pattern will stay the same, but you have now a new dynamic underneath it. And so I've created a concept called parapercussion as an example, where you go through old works and you can pull out your percussion, but when it does that, it's pulling out all of this instrumentation as an artifact. It thinks it's percussion. And so if you are in the production process and you're doing this on a piece you're already working on, then what you're doing is you're adding more of an original tonality to your work, but you're also creating that liveliness that is not digital. So you don't have it's like when they wanted to add analog warmth to digital, they started going through all these tubes and ways to treat the speakers and to create more warmth from these static digital sounds. And eventually, now it's like you can get anything you want out of it in terms of warmth. And so that's what the spectral processing is kind of similar to that. You can pull more of the liveliness, what makes the sound, the shape of the sound, what makes the shape of the loop, so that it is more interesting. Like you would have an 808 loop over here, but over here you have a John Bonham drum track. Which one's got more life to it? So even though there's all this processing in the John Bonham, we're using this as an example where you're gonna get more frequency and more of interesting things and more artifacts going on, but in subtle ways, so that you don't have to lose the connection with the the main intention of that pattern. And what's interesting about spectral gating is we're talking about being a key master or a gatekeeper. And so when you're the key master, you're the person with the spectral processing system that can see all of the invisible stuff, like in Wi-Fi, all of the invisible wires that power everything. You can utilize these invisible wires with spectral processing. And so that's what spectral processing is doing, except to the music ether. So you're pulling stuff out of the musical realm, and it's more to the drums, and there's more to the piano, because inside of all these things there's this weird hybrid state of the combinations of what really makes a chord. I mean, what really makes a chord, not just the harmonic intervals, but what the heck made that harmonic interval interesting? What combination of things that occurred? So when you're dealing in the spectral world, you could pull a chord and it's coming out of a weird place. It's coming out of a weird abstraction. So it's the ultimate abstracting tool. And so that's why you're going to get a more unique experience when you utilize spectral processing and spectral gating. Now, the problem with the spectral systems is that there's a learning curve, just like this long video. It doesn't need to be this long, right? But with spectral, you really have to wrap your head around what the tool that you're using does, because all the spectral tools will do different things. And so that's why the learning curve is to first understand what's it actually shaping? What impression is it forming from the algorithm provided by the tool? And so then you can extend upon that as well by sequencing spectral events, so that you're pulling a kick here, you're pulling a piano here, you're pulling a a guitar here from one track, right? And when you're doing that, you're pulling out a difference to where it's going to create an interesting, let's say, flow of sounds, so that they're not just your traditional basic production concepts where you just have a bed of this and a bed of that, and they just keep going on for the full 4 minutes of the track or the 2 minutes of the track. So in this way, you're gating all of this stuff. And when the spectral gate happens, it's a special process, because the spectral gate is taking that impression that it made. It could be a very drastic one or a very subtle one. And so it's taking that and it's going in and out of the spectrum with the content you provided to the algorithm to feed it what to do with all of this sound. And so there's this threshold component to it, but the threshold is a magical threshold because it's pulling in that amplitude, that frequency, and the time duration. And so you have like this weird way of creating a sound that doesn't exist at all, but that's what makes it, really have a potential to do incredible things. So not only do you pull out a sound design, but you pull out something that's going to affect rhythm, and it's going to affect chords and in strange ways. So spectral gating is the point of this one, and spectral modulation to create a more interesting and thought-provoking musical experience.